So this is a very brief presentation that we're doing prior to heading out to spend the majority of the day working in the bees. Today we're going to discuss basic hive inspection and then fall and winter of the beekeeping year. So honeybee colonies are not plug and play. They have living critters that have ideas of their own, and so we have to be responsive to what they do as opposed to trying to dictate what these wild stinging insects are going to do. But we can do certain things that will guide them in the direction we want them to go. In order to accomplish that, we have to develop awareness of what the bees need and when, adjust our management to the bees and not the calendar, because the calendar, especially with the seasons being as unpredictable as they are, is not a solid guideline for us. And then environmental challenges and changes that require management changes. So we have to look at the quality of the queen. We do this by assessing brood and food stores. And this means that we have to learn to figure out what eggs and uncapped and capped brood looks like, what nectar stores, pollen and capped honey all look like. And then we have to decide when we're going to look for these things. We have to figure out when a good time is. We want to make sure that there's good light, temperatures are warm enough, that it's not too windy, that it's not raining. Before we go and look for these things, we need to be prepared. So use a checklist, review your notes, get all your gear together, and then suit up and light your smoker. And having a plan, you're going to review your notes and have your goals in mind, and this will help you determine what your plan is for any specific visit. Then, once you have a plan, make a checklist. Any of these things might be on your checklist depending on what your plan is. Is the queen present? How is the brood looking? Does the brood look healthy? Are there signs of imminent swarming? Are there any indication of mites? How is the colony reacting to your presence? Are honey stores growing nicely? Is it time to add more space or reduce space? Can you think of any other questions? So what's your mission? Your notes will let you know if there is something in additional that you want to check on. For instance, you might want to detect it if you have detected an issue and you are going in to solve it. Maybe there was a queen issue, so you bought a queen and you're going to install her, or ordered another box and you're going to put it on. And then a swarm cells, so you're going to split. And then maybe you detected an issue and you took an action and you want to go back and check in on it. Did it work? Did what you were attempting to accomplish actually happen, or did something else happen? You need to respond to something new and unforeseen. So the question is, do you need to look at every frame in every box for every inspection? And do you need to see the queen every time to assess how she is and if she is present? The answer to both of those questions is no, not necessarily. And for your first inspection, the one thing to keep in mind is that being calm equals being calm equals bees calm. So assuming you don't have aggressive bees that have aggressive tendencies, if you move slow, thoughtful, precise, you move with intention, the bees will react to you in kind. And then your goal is to appease your bees. Clean up as you go along, do the least amount of damage, be as brief as possible without rushing, and have a plan and stick to it, unless, of course, something unforeseen happens. Before you open the hive, note the environmental cues, observe the entrance, and then avoid standing in front of the hive and blocking the entry. All right, so now you've got your smoker going. You're gonna puff for the bees. Puff, puff, wait. And this is at the entrance. Before you open anything, you're gonna crack off the lid, lift the outer cover, and set it upside down on the stand or on the ground. If you're setting it on the ground, you want to make sure it's located somewhere you're not going to trip over it. And then puff, puff, wait. So that's through the slit in the inner cover or through the screen on your feeder. And then crack it open, lift the inner cover or the feeder away from you, and if it's the inner cover, you're going to nestle it upside down in the outer cover. And then depending on how the bees are receiving you, you may want to puff another little bit of smoke. And it's possible that you won't need smoke past that point. It just depends on the bees, the time of year. You want to make sure you have your smoker handy, though, in case you need it. All right, so insert your frame rest on the side that you'll remove the frame from. And that is if you're using a frame rest, otherwise you'll lean them in the front towards the entrance. And then pull the number 2 frame, which you want to do by making sure that there's plenty of room, using leverage in your hive tool to condense all of the frames as far away from the outermost edge as possible. And then you're going to take the number 1 frame and make as much space as you can between the number 1 frame and the number 2 frame. And then you're going to move the number 2 frame using leverage into the middle of the gap that you just created. And then you're going to pull it out. Check to make sure the queen is not on it. When you're doing that, make sure you hold it over the brood frames in the box. And once you're sure that there's no queen on it, as long as the temperature is warm enough, you can go ahead and set it on the frame rest. And that will give you enough room now that you can go through the box and look at the different frames. So when you're looking at the frames, you're going to be looking for certain things like open and capped brood and eggs, sealed brood, nectar, pollen and bee bread, and then here's this beautifully capped full frame of honey. But this is a good example of what cappings look like on honey. Is the queen present, and do you see all stages of brood development for worker? Are the bees bringing in pollen and nectar? Is the bee population growing? Are the bees building new comb? Is it time to add another brood box or put on a honey super? Is there anything unusual that you noticed? And then once you've gone through and had a look, make sure that you put everything back. You're going to, as you go through, you're going to nestle the frames next to each other and maintain their touching so that when you finally get to the very end, there are no gaps between the frames. And what you'll be able to do is use your hive tool then to keep all the frames together and leverage all of the frames back to their original locations in one motion. And that will again create that gap where you can nestle in the number 2 frame. And then you're going to close the gap on either side of the number 2 frame. And then you're going to keeping all the frames together in the middle, touching, you're going to equalize the space, the distance, on either end of the clump of frames. Now, once you get out and you're starting to take off your gear, just make sure that you check yourself and your buddy for any clingy bees. Move slowly when pulling off your suit and pay attention to what you're doing, because you may make it through the entire inspection without getting stung and then end up getting stung when you're taking off your gear. So just be forewarned that that's a possibility. And then make sure that you have a good look at your notes, and then you're going to make sure you make good records. So your notes may include what was your mission, what did you actually do, what did you find, and what do you need to do next time? And then mark it on your calendar. So if there's nothing really going on and you feel fairly certain that it's going to be in fine shape when you go back, you say 3 weeks, just put it on your calendar so that when you're scheduling stuff with all your friends and coworkers or whatever, you're able to easily see that that weekend you should probably think about doing a hive inspection also. Okay, so it's good also to make journal entries that are a little bit more freeform. So if you take good notes and do good record keeping, it's also nice to have a journal. Situational notes, thoughts, feelings, philosophical musings, questions you may want to find answers to, observations that interested you, aha moments, that kind. So we are going to look at what are we doing in the winter months, and the winter months are late fall and winter. Essentially run August, which is the beginning of the beekeeping year, through, say, January, roughly. So in August, we're going to be requeening. If we're going to requeen, that's a good time to do it. Testing and treating, harvesting the last of the honey. We're going to be freezing and storing any frames that need to get pulled out, that have any kind of any kind of feed on them, or just dry frames. We'll potentially still be feeding 1-to-1, but it depends on the weather. We may begin to feed 2-to-1. 1-to-1 is a stimulant feed. We're going to be using that for them to raise new bees. And then 2-to-1 is their winter storage feed. So we probably will be doing 2-to-1 still in August. 1-to-1 still in August. We're going to be making sure that we either have our robbing screen or our entrance reducers on there, and it won't be long before we're going to be installing our mouse guards. So September, October, we're going to do quick inspections, feeding, possibly 1-to-1, possibly 2-to-1, pollen, if they need it to build those vitagelin-rich winter bees, testing and treating, combining and consolidating, ventilating, and winterizing, and installing our mouse guards. January, February. Notice there's not anything here about November, December, because November and December you're in Hawaii. In November and December, it may be that there will be an opportunity where you're going to have a couple of days of nice warmish weather, where you can check to see how the bees are located and see if they have food stores nearby, if you need to relocate food stores nearby to the cluster. But other than that, you're going to be going to beekeeping meetings and working on your equipment and catching up on your magazine articles. January, February is the peak. You might peek at the bees or weigh them to check and see what they're doing. You may, on a warm day, reposition feed. You may give them fondant or some other kind of sugar feed, solid sugar feed. By the end of February, you might be feeding them 1-to-1 and pollen. And this is the season when we prophylactically treat with oxalic acid vape. So then that's the seasons that we're talking about. I mean, the months that we're talking about. Fall and winter, the beginning of the beekeeping year. Bees born in September, October are winter bees. Live for 4 to 6 months. Winter bees are fat. Honeybees have a fat reserve like mammals. In honeybees, that fat is called phytogelin. Fall management starts in August. Good laying queen and brood pattern. If not, you want to requeen. Good population of bees. If not, you want to try to combine your colonies. And then check hive for pests and diseases. When I say combine colonies, it may be that you incorporate 2 weak colonies together, or that you incorporate a strong colony and a weak colony together, or 2 sort of mediocre colonies together. You may make 1 large colony and then keep a couple of frames reserved and the queen and some bees, and make a small nuke that you will overwinter as a nucleus colony if you want to keep that queen but the colony is not large enough. So there's some different options and possibilities for how you might go about recombinating the bees. And then check the hive for pests and diseases. If you see anything, go ahead and treat. And then before the bad weather arrives, provide entrance reducers and mouse guards. Level the hives left to right with a slight forward tilt so that any moisture that accumulates in the hive can run out. Provide the bees with a windbreak if they need it, especially if they're in an area where the wind whips through. And then provide an upper entrance and good ventilation. And the upper entrance is really partly for the ventilation and partly as a way for the bees to come and go if there gets to be enough snow on the ground that they are not able to access their lower entrance. And then feed your bees. In fall, before temperatures drop, give them the 2-to-1 and make sure that they backfill around the brood chamber before adding. If you have a honey super for them, don't give it to them until they finish diminishing into their cluster size and have backfilled honey all around the brood chamber. And then fondant or sugar candy placed on top of the bars below the inner cover if we're running into colder days at that point and they need feed. And then it's best to check feed colonies every warm day throughout the winter. Just have a peek and see if you have a couple of warm days.